everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm going to sew along with you the Take 3 Crossbody by Tobi Stylx. Oops, I have it undone there. This is the most adorable bag. Let me show you some of the features of this bag before we get into the guts of the bag. So it's got a magnetic snap closure. You can see it's 3 pouches in one, has a short carry handle, a crossbody strap. When you open it up, you have the 3 zipper pouches. In between each zipper pouch is a small slip pocket. Each of these open up. Now you're going to notice that the zippers do go in different directions. That is to reduce the bulk when you go to close it with the flap. So you have the outside ones closing to the left or to the right, and the middle one closing to the left. 3 pouches. This can be made, I believe in the pattern, it's written to be made in mostly cottons. When I got to the last step, I realized probably why. I'm not gonna lie, the last turning step was a workout. It probably took me about half an hour or so to do that, to turn it out. But I mean, seriously, it was completely and totally worth it. I mean, look how adorable this bag is. Materials I used in this bag. Again, it's a turned bag. You do turn it through 3 times. Each pouch is a turn. The last pouch is the biggest one because you have all of this stuff sandwiched in the middle. That would be why there is minimal interfacing in this bag. Speaking of interfacing, what do we have? In this front pocket, or front part, I have EBFuse Heavy, which is equivalent to Handicrafts Lite. So the front panel and the back panel are backed with that. All my other ones are uninterfaced because I am using vinyl. If you're using cotton, you would just have all your cotton pieces with a medium woven interfacing. I used EBFuse Lite for my lining pieces, which is similar to an SF101 or medium woven interfacing. So you'd have that all done. And then you would also have your Handicrafts Lite or EBFuse Heavy on the back and the front panels. It called for, in the flap, Handicrafts Lite. I actually used Handicrafts Heavy, which probably made it a little harder to turn, but I like my flaps to be a little bit more stiff. What else? Interfacing wise, it calls for, actually, I think it calls for fleece. If you are on a domestic machine instead of the Handicrafts Lite. Fleece may actually have made this a little bit easier to turn for me. So my next one, I may decide to do that. We will see. All my hardware is from Emmaline bags. This Starbucks vinyl is from Fangirl's Fabrics, a Canadian company. This Lilac is a Canuck vinyl from Kustoms, again, another Canadian company. And besides that, I think that is all the guts. Oh, I lied. My zippers and zipper pulls are from Blue Calla. Again, this was actually a pretty fun and quick make. Hardest part, again, doing that last turn through, but trust me, just endeavor through it. It is completely and 100% worth it because look how adorable this bag is. I mean, seriously, it is so cute. Anyways, let's get to making this bag. You are going to need some rivets, number 5 zipper tape, 2 swivel clasps, 2 rectangular rings, 2 D-rings, your nameplate, optional 4 strap ends, a magnetic snap, 3 number 5 zipper pulls, and a slider. Now, you may want to edge paint your vinyl flap. I am using 3 coats of Giardini base paint, an Angelus color coat, and then a protective gloss. Okay, so you're going to need your 2 flap pieces, one of them backed with Handicrafts Lite or Handicrafts Heavy outside of the seam allowances. You are going to need 2 exterior main body pieces. I have mine backed with EBFuse Heavy, which is equivalent to Handicrafts Lite. Your 2 middle ones and your 2 other ones for your exterior, as well as 6 lining pieces. Your crossbody strap, your handle, your invisible connector, 2 crossbody connectors, 3 zipper tabs. I'm going to go ahead and do my handles on my crossbody strap off camera. I will put that down below in the description if you need a class on how to do that. Now for our invisible connector, I have drawn a middle line. I'm going to use some double-sided tape and fold the long edges into that center line. And then we're going to take this to the machine and top stitch down each side with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, we are going to take our flat piece that does not have the interfacing on it. Grab the pattern piece, and I've put a little slit in the marking where our invisible connector is going to go. I'm lining my pattern piece up against one side, making a mark, flipping the pattern piece over to make the mark on the other side. And then you're going to go ahead and cut that 1-inch line just under 1 inch. You want your connector to be really tight, so I probably cut more of a 7/8 of an inch here. Now you're going to take your invisible connector and you are going to put it through the back like this, so the connector is wrong side up on each side. So through those holes, the connectors are showing as wrong side up with our flap right side up. And we are going to take this, and right beside the slit, right here, on the connector, within the connector's width, we are going to go ahead and stitch that in place. Now I suggest for this switching out to your zipper foot, as it helps get really nice and close to the hardware when we go to finish the invisible connector. Okay, so again, you are sewing on the connector side, not on the flap side here. We do not want to be closing up that little slit that we made. We just want to attach this on one side. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to take our rectangular ring and loop it on, and then put the short end through that slit like so. And if you left your slit a little bit smaller, when you pull that through, you're going to see how that raw edge folds under, so you no longer have that raw edge. Do the same with the other side and pull it through. And then we're going to take this to the machine, and we are going to top stitch on that little folded edge with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now we are sewing that slit shut, so we are sewing through the flap side of the connector. Now that that's done and our rectangular rings are nice and secure, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and install rivets right here and right here for extra stability. Okay, so that is all done. As you can see, I've also backed those with scraps of Decaville Heavy. Now we need to place our male side of our magnetic snap. So you're going to take the flap that has either the Decaville Lite or Decaville Heavy, depending what you chose. And you're going to use your pattern piece to mark where suggested for the male side of the snap and install it. I like to put a piece of duct tape on the back of mine just to make sure that those snaps are a little, or those prongs are a little more secure. You're going to take some double-sided tape outside of the top stitch seam allowance here across one of the flap panels. Again, this is the vinyl version with raw edges. And then you're going to take and put the two flap pieces wrong sides together, evenly matching up each side. You could also use glue here if you wanted to. I opted for double-sided tape just because I didn't have to wait for it to dry. Again, match up each of the sides close as possible. If it's off a little bit, that's okay. We will be trimming up the seam here momentarily. We're going to go ahead and sew all the way around here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm switching back out to my regular foot now. So go ahead and stitch around all sides with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance top stitch. You want to make sure that your bobbin thread and your top thread both look really good, as both threads are going to show for the flap. I like to hand crank around the curves just because I feel like I have a little more control of getting that perfect shape. See, that's all done. Now you can go ahead and you can trim those seam allowances up to about 1/8 of an inch or so. You'll want to make this nice and even and creating a nice surface for where we will be doing our edge painting. And again, you, instead of doing it this way, if you wanted to turn it, you could definitely put these two panels right sides together, so around with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, leaving the top straight edge open, and then just turning the flap through and then closing up that top edge after by folding in those raw edges. So there are two different flaps, so you can definitely decide which one you want to do. Go ahead and edge paint that. Okay, so now I'm taking one of my exterior panels that has my EBFuse Heavy or Deckable Light on the exterior. This is going to be my front panel, and I'm going to want to install my female's end of my magnetic snap. So once again, I'm using the placement from my pattern piece, and I'm going to go ahead and install the magnetic snap onto the front piece. Once that is done, I again like to put a piece of duct tape on the back. I'm also going to go ahead and install my nameplate. I think right about in this lower right hand corner works for me. Okay, so I've cut some zipper by the yard to about 9 inches or so. With the zipper pull closing to the left and all these, I'm going to go ahead and turn one end of each short end down by a 90-degree angle, making sure they're nice and even and holding them in place with the pin. You will be doing this for all three, just on the one side, and then you will go ahead and baste these 90-degree angles in place. Sometimes it helps to use the stiletto to hold this in place a little bit better to make sure that your zipper tape does not slip. So the next step we are going to do is putting the zipper ends on the opposite side of each of these zippers. You can go ahead and you can trim up those 90-degree angles so it's nice and even with the zipper tape. I'm going to do my zipper ends a little bit different. I am using vinyl for my zipper ends. So before we do our zipper ends, make sure that you measure and cut your zipper tape so they measure 7.5 inches. And then go ahead and take your vinyl zipper end and put it right sides together with the zipper tape. and we are going to go and sew across here with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you've done that, you're going to fold the zipper end wrong sides together, and you are going to be using that 1/2 inch seam as your guide where that goes, kind of as a template to fold it over. And then you're going to go ahead and top stitch right along where that seam was that we had just sewn with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You'll see that the back end of the zipper end is longer. That is perfectly fine. We're going to trim that up shortly. Again, you can only do this method if you're using a non-fraying fabric. So once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and on the wrong side of the zipper tape, I'm just going to trim up that vinyl excess overhang to about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then trim my zipper ends up to be the same width of the tape for all 3 zippers. Okay, so now we're going to work on our crossbody connectors. So once again, I've drawn a middle line down my connectors, and I'm folding the long edges into that center line. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to top stitch those with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now that that's done, I'm just going to take little pieces of double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances, and I'm going to take my D-ring and bring those connectors wrong sides together, sandwiching that D-ring. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and put those aside for now. All right, so now we're going to work on the middle pouches. So what we want to do is we want to take one of the exterior fabrics that doesn't have the interfacing on and one of our middle pouches. Find the centers or middle pouch panels, which is my lilac color here. I want to find the top and bottom centers as well as the side centers. I'm just doing little clips here. This is to help center our template piece here. So I've gone ahead and I have drawn the cross section. And I've also marked the cross sections on my paper pattern piece template. I've matched up those lines for my cross section so I know that this is nice and even, drawn it out, making sure that we're 2 inches away from all the edges. Now we're going to take our exterior piece and that middle pouch piece, put them right sides together, clip all the way around. And then at the top sections where we had drawn our template out, we almost want to do like a little triangle mark like here. And that is going to just help secure the stitches a little bit better. We're going to backstitch here, go up the triangle all the way around and back down the triangle again. You'll also do the same for the other side. Okay, so I am starting at the end of one of those little triangles that we drew. And I'm doing a few back stitches. Coming to the point of the triangle with my needle down, pivoting it around, working across the top of the triangle, and then down and around the line we drew for our template piece. What this is doing is it's attaching our 2 of our pouches together here, as well as creating that hidden slip pocket in between the pouches. Okay, so I've come back up to that little triangle we drew, put my needle down, pivot along the top, needle down, and pivot down that third side, and backstitch. Do the same thing with the other side of the middle pouch. Okay, so this is what we have here. You can go ahead and take your clips off. And then what we want to do is with the exterior fabric side of this, we want to fold it away from the middle section. So I am using some painter's tape here. You'll see in this video it doesn't work for me very well. It's just cheap dollar store painter's tape, but I ended up using clips later on to hold it in place. If you are using cotton here, you can definitely just go ahead and pin this in place. But you just want to have that exterior section out of the way because we are going to be creating that middle pouch now. We don't want to accidentally be sewing through this. Okay, so now that those are kind of out of the way, I'm going to take my D-ring crossbody connectors and I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch from the raw edge, and that is going to mark as our line where we are going to line it up with our sides here. On one of our middle connector, our middle sections here, we want to measure down 1.5 inches. And this is going to be where we are going to put our connector. We want to make sure that the connector is straight, matched up with the top edge. We do not want it on an angle matching the side. So you want it to be straight, clip it in place, and then we're going to go ahead and baste this in. So that 3/4 of an inch line is what I use to line up at that very, very top part like so. So my connector is nice and straight, and I have about 3/4 of an inch hanging outside of the bag. Go ahead and baste those two connectors in place. As you can see, my painter's tape is already failing me. Okay, so now that that is done, you can go ahead and trim off that excess from the connectors like so. And now we're going to install our first zipper. So using double-sided tape is so helpful in this. If you're on a domestic, try Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape, as it will not gum up your needle. What we want to do is take this exterior piece that has our connectors on it, and we want to find the center of our zipper tape. And we're going to line it up with the center of our main piece here, with the zipper pull closing to the left. These are right sides together. Double check that it is definitely center. So again, the zipper is right side down and this panel is right side up, and the pull is closing to the left. Next, you're going to take your lining piece, put some more double-sided tape along the top. Again, you can do this with clips. It's just the tape for this, especially when we get to the other pouches, definitely makes it a lot easier. This is where I decide to just clip these. It's a lot easier because my painter's tape is not doing the trick at all. So you're going to go ahead, take this lining piece, put it right sides together like so, sandwiching that zipper in between that middle main panel and the lining panel, and we're going to go across here with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now at this point, I am just going to keep my zipper put on for the construction of the rest of this bag. Trust me, this zipper foot, this is my right zipper foot, is key to making this bag, especially when we get into doing all of the layers together. You will want to have your zipper foot on here. So go ahead and sew the zipper seam with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, next what we want to do is we want to have our seam pointing towards the vinyl exterior piece in my thing here. So your exterior piece, you want the seam to be pointing down towards that, not into the lining side, but into that exterior piece. You're going to keep the lining flipped out of the way, and we're just going to top stitch through here, just through that exterior piece. We are not top stitching through the lining piece. So go ahead and top stitch that zipper seam in place with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that is done, you're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with the other exterior piece here and the other lining piece. Again, I'm taking my tape off and just securing with clips instead. And you're going to just repeat the process with the other side of the zipper. Okay, so this is what we have. This is almost our first pouch done. Make sure your zipper is undone here. Bring the exteriors right sides together and the linings right sides together. Line up your seams like so. Your zipper tab on the one side, you will want to kind of be pushed out facing the exterior, like so. So kind of bubble it out like so, match up that seam. And then this part just goes together like a regular pouch. Actually, the whole bag does that, believe it or not. But we will be doing this 3 times, and each step gets thicker and thicker and a little harder to turn. So go ahead and clip around all edges. Okay, and then once you get to the lining side, what we're going to do is we're going to leave an 8 or 9 inch opening in the bottom for turning. So I'm just going to mark this here as opens as a reminder for myself. And for the lining piece, from here to just before we hit where the exterior is, we're going to sew it with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then go to a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and then to a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to finish off. And what this does is make it so our lining is a little smaller than our exterior, so it's not baggy on the inside of the pouch. So go ahead and start at that first line, backstitch, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then about halfway up start branching into a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now when you go through where the zipper tab is, you should not be sewing through the zipper tab. It's about a 1/2 inch in, and we're sewing with a 1/4 of an inch, so we should be almost right beside it, which is exactly what we want. Work around the exterior with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. The middle pouch is super easy. It's like with each pouch, you're going up a level in a video game. Again, when you come to where the zipper meets, you're going through here with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and then work your way down the lining, and about a 1/3 or a 1/2 of the way through, go ahead and branch out to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and backstitch at that last mark that we made for the opening. Take our pinking shears, and on the vinyl side, we're just going to clip these corners a little bit to help with the turning out of those corners. Go ahead, reach into that opening and turn this right side out. This first pouch is like beginner level turning through. Once you get it turned through, make sure you finger press all of those seams out. I'm just sticking my finger into those curves and make sure they are nice and flat. Poke out your zipper tab. Mine looks great. Stuff that lining in. Then what you can do is pull the lining out again, and we are going to take that opening and turn the raw edges under, and then top stitch that shut. So I'm just going to top stitch those folded under edges with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, stuff the lining back in, and that is pouch 1 complete. The middle pouch is done. Now we're going to go into intermediate pouch number 2. So now what we want to do is we want to take that front panel that has the magnetic snap and our main snap on. We are going to do the exact same thing that we did in the beginning with that middle one. We're going to take our double-sided tape or clip this on. The only difference is we are going to be putting our zipper down with the zipper pull to the right this time. So we are going to put these right sides together, zipper pull to the right. Take your lining panel, do the same thing and put it right sides together with the main panel, sandwiching that zipper tape. And then we will sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just like we did with the middle pouch. Okay, so that is done. I have top stitched just through that exterior like we did with the middle pouch. Now we are going to take our panel here that we have. We're going to kind of squish in the one side of our exterior fabric out of the way, fold down that middle pouch like so, and put some tape along the top edge of the other exterior pouch. So we should have both of the zipper pulls should look like they are facing to the left right now, with both of these right side up. Now we're going to take that that front piece and we're going to put it right sides together. So now the zipper pull of the front piece will be pointing to the left and the middle one will be pointing to the right. And you're going to stick these down, and we are going to do the same thing as we did with the main pouch. This is just a little more thickness because we have that other side all squished into the middle to make sure we don't sew through that. So the reason we have our zipper pulls going in opposite directions is to make it so we don't have as much zipper pull bulk underneath the flap. So the exterior pouches will be closing to the right and the middle pouch closes to the left. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we are going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can see how our bag is getting thicker and thicker here. Again, this isn't sewing through any thickness at all. This is just the stuff we are squishing into the middle to bring the seams together. We do not sew through any of that middle part at all. So this is completely domestic machine friendly. It's just more, this becomes more and more pillowy like as we go. So once again, go ahead and push the exterior seam down towards the exterior, just like we did with the other ones. And then we are going to just top stitch just through that exterior piece with the lining piece out of the way. And make sure that you have that middle pouch folded out of the way while you top stitch through just the main exterior front panel here. Okay, so just like we did with the front pouch, we are going to make sure we have the middle pouch all kind of folded into the middle here. Our second zipper pouch we have open because we are going to be turning it. We're going to bring those exterior panels that we had just sewn right sides together, doing the exact same thing we did with the middle, but this is the intermediate pouch level, I think, level 2. So you're going to bring all those edges together and make sure that middle pouch you are squishing outside of the seam allowance out of the way. We do not want to accidentally sew through that. Work your way all the way around, leave an opening in the bottom, and do exactly like we did with the middle pouch. So this is what it looks like. This is where I said a zipper foot really helps because you can sew really close to that thickness without slipping off of the vinyl. So go ahead, turn this right side out, and this is what you have. We now have the 2 pouches totally complete. We've sewn up the bottoms, and again we are just going to rinse. Well, actually first I lied. We're going to take that back panel. This is the other one that I have EBFuse Heavy or Decovil Light on. Find the back center of that main panel, and we are going to mark a center line with a removable pen about 2 inches or so down, and then from that top edge we want to measure down 1.5 inches and make a line across. Then we want to take our flap right side up like so. We want to find the center of the back side of this and mark it. And then on the wrong side, I'm going to use some double-sided tape to help hold this in place. And then we are going to stick this down both our back panel and our flap right sides up, nice and centered along that 1.5-inch line that we drew. Make sure it's nice and straight. Then we're going to go ahead and stitch this in place with 1/8 of an inch top stitch, and then again with 1/4 of an inch top stitch, just along that straight edge of the flap. So I'm trying to start my stitching right where my top stitching of the flap was. So putting my needle down there, giving it a back stitch, and I'm following the 1/8 of an inch top stitch that I already had on my flap here from when we sewn it together. Then we're going to go back in and do another line of top stitching 1/4 of an inch away from that straight edge of our flap to give it a little bit more security. Now that that's done, we are going to go ahead and install 3 rivets just to help give even more security to this flap. So 2 on the ends, 1 in the middle. I'd like to put mine right in between that 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch top stitch. That is done. I've backed them with deckable heavy scraps as well. Now you want to fold the flap out of the way, and we are going to make the final pouch in the exact same manner we did with the other 2. This one, you are going to make sure that your pull is closing to the right when it's right sides together. And you're just going to repeat exactly what we did with the other pouches, putting these lining sides together, or right sides together, sewing it shut, and then we are going to go ahead and attach it to the other 2 pouches as well. So make sure your flap is folded down and out of the way. You do not want to accidentally sew through it when we're doing our zipper here. Okay, so that's done. So once again, I'm going to top stitch right through here, just through the exterior with the lining out of the way. Make sure your flap is out of the way. You do not want to be top stitching through that flap. Okay, and now it's time for a little bit of a workout. So we want to do the other side of that zipper. So these other 2 flaps we have here, we need to kind of squish them in and out of the way of our zipper here. But it's the exact same process, just a little bit more middle bulk to be aware of to make sure we are not sewing through that. So again, put your double-sided tape here, tape that back piece, put it right sides together with that, like so, nice and centered. Once again, sandwich that zipper tape with the remaining lining piece. This is like expert level pouch making now, doing this third one. And then once again, you're going to go ahead and sew across here with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and once again do that top stitch just through the exterior back panel there. So you can definitely see there's a little bit more bulkiness here. Again, we are not sewing through any of that bulk. We are folding it out of the way. We do not want to sew through it. Okay, we're going to once again pull that seam down towards the exterior piece. I like to use double-sided tape to do that. If you're using cotton, you can definitely press this. Make sure the seam is pointing down towards the exterior piece and the vinyl piece is out of the way. And we're going to go ahead, fold these out of the way, and just top stitch through here. Okay, so again, same process. You're going to tuck the flap out of the way. You're going to tuck the other two pouches out of the way. Make sure the zipper that we had just sewn on is open. And we are going to bring the exteriors right sides together, squishing everything else in between. I said this seems tough, but it's not. It'll be okay. It's just a little more awkward than anything, but it's the exact same process that we did with the other two pouches. It just has more stuff stuffed into the middle that we do not want to sew through. So go ahead and match up your seams. As you can see, this is where I said it would be so much easier if I had done these in soft vinyls or all cottons, because these would be a lot easier to kind of fold out of the way. But I still managed. No regrets. I love the way mine turned out. Okay, so you can see I'm still stuffing things into the middle there, out of the way. Continue clipping around. Now, the only thing I recommend with this third pouch is leaving a larger opening in the lining for turning, especially if you have used vinyl like me. You see that I will be doing that here momentarily. So just when I got past the curves of the lining, that's where I left the lining open. You can definitely see that bulk there. So yes, you can see I'm leaving a huge turning hole here, and we are going to sew these exactly like we did the others, with the 3/8 of an inch through the lining, 1/4 of an inch through the exterior, and all the way around. And now you are definitely going to see why that zipper foot is necessary. Look at how almost pillow-like that exterior is with everything stuffed into that middle. The zipper foot just helps get really nice and close into that edge, rather than having the wider foot where at this point it would almost be the foot would be on top of the bulk and I could see the foot slipping off of the seam. Having the right zipper foot on right now is making it so I have a lot more control over that seam, and it is not sliding everywhere because I can sew nice and close to that bulky section without sewing through that bulk. So take your time, go all the way around. I promise this is so worth it. So that's done. I've already gone ahead and I've notched my corners. Now we are to the toughest part of this bag, which is the turning out of it. Now I am going to show you my effort of turning this out, just so you see it was not a fast process. So if it's taking you time, it took me time as well. It is just what it is. Just take it slow. Make sure you're not pulling things too hard to rip out seams. Kind of squish and massage and pull and squish and massage and pull. Again, I used really stiff vinyls, which made this kind of tough. As you can see, I am working up a sweat, but just working it through bit by bit. Trying to work on getting that flap to come through. Make sure you're hydrated when you're doing this workout. As soon as you get that flap out, I found that it turned a lot easier. As you can see, I got the flap out here and it just started turning through a lot easier there. Again, super hot. This was a workout. Not gonna lie, it took me about 20-25 minutes to turn it out. But hey, that was my exercise for the day, right? All right, now here we go. So go ahead once you've got it turned out and push out all of those corners through that opening in the lining. Make sure everything is shaped really good. You can already see how amazing this is going to look. Once you have that all done, you can go ahead and sew shut the opening in that lining, once again turning in those raw edges. And top stitching it shut. Once that's done, go ahead and add on your handles. I just riveted mine on, and look how amazing this looks. Again, the toughest part was the turning through of that third pouch. Good job, everybody. And we're done. All right, that's it. That's all. As you can see, it actually went together pretty easy. You can see the effort I had to put into it for that last turn. You may have an easier time than me with that. I do have quite severe carpal tunnel, so that definitely was a workout for me. But again, look at the amazing result for all that effort. 100% worth it. Anyways, if you did like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. That really does help me out a lot. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Again, we made this for our September 22 Thursday evening classes. So if you wanted a more slowed down class on how to do this, you can definitely join the membership side for the Thursday night sew-alongs, and you'll be able to see the replays of the class on this if you wanted to. Yeah. I think that's it. Until the next one, I will see you guys again. Bye.